Welcome everybody to episode 19 of this humble little Zoomcast. I'm Matt Grima, and today an absolute special guest in the building. One of the industry's greats. It's Michael Armstrong from the Burton Group, one of their partners, some 16 years in the game. Michael, a collaborative effort today, some might say, with Marshall White and Burton joining forces. Welcome to Zoomcast.
It is. Thanks, Matt. It's traditional rivals, I think we are, but I think we've got to drop the barriers in these things, and it's great to chat, mate. And we've had some good associations in the past, so it's a pleasure to be a guest. And you've had some terrific guests in the past. I'm a long-time listener, so it's good to be the face on the camera for once.
Good on you. Good on you. No, thanks very much for jumping on. I did. This is like Collingwood and Carlton, sometimes maybe on the same team, but you and I had a really good chat off camera. We were talking about the competitive juices on a day-to-day, but we're probably more about the greater good today as a result of another lockdown, what COVID's done to our industry in general, and the fact that perhaps some more collaboration in the future might be the way forward. And you can compete with people on a daily basis or companies, but there's always some really good people and some nice connections that are made. So well done. Thanks for giving us some time today.
No, pleasure. And you make a good point. I think that's spot on. I mean, we're in a more challenging environment, of course, so it's important that there's no need for sort of unnecessary rivalries, I don't think. And you know, more is more. That's the philosophy we should all have.
Well done. Well done. We've got a lot to unpack today, and as I said, we had a really nice chat just off camera prior to jumping on board. Your background in real estate, there actually are a lot of links that intrinsically to Marshall White and our company, but maybe take the listeners back to the beginning, where it all started for you, how you actually got in to become one of the top estate agents that you are.
Sure. Well, I'm in my sort of heritage, I'm arguably more Marshall White than a lot of your colleagues and previous guests on this show. My dad was a past owner of the business, and he was partners with Marshall White, the man, for the best part of, I think it was about 20 years. And actually, Dad and Marshall sold the business to Jack and James. So that was probably mid-90s, I think. So that I guess my upbringing, and I was, as we were chatting off camera, we used to live in Hunting Tower Road in Armidale, so where the Marshall White Armidale office is, and we lived literally one door away. Back when I was, you know, a young lad, and Dad was at his peak, sort of in the 80s. We used to, the office used to be on the opposite corner to where the Marshall White office is now. So where I think it's an Abercrombie's office, or it's where the Marshall White One office was more recently. So we used to be next door to that, and I think they have knocked it down and done a development there that I think Marcus is selling at the moment. So it's that was our family home, and I think my upbringing, every single day, we'd either go into the office and see Dad after school and hang out with him in there, or we'd have an agent come over every single night after work. And I think Mum just used to automatically set a spare place at the dinner table for one of the agents that worked for Dad to come over and join us and pick his brain. And it was probably before the days of even emails and, certainly mobile phones and the connectivity we have today. So I guess it was more relevant that people had to come round and talk real estate all night with Dad. So that it was definitely entrenched in me at a young age. I sort of, after I left school, I sort of did a marketing degree, and I travelled for a bit. I played a lot of cricket. I played district cricket and things like this, and that was great fun. And I never sort of intended to get into the industry, but I was invited to work for, in fact, Torsten Casper, who a lot of people would know, of course, Torsten from Chisholm and Gaming. He invited me to come and just do a sort of an apprenticeship there in my it must have been early 20s. And I loved it, and I'm still friends with Torsten and Sam and all the crew. And I was doing property management at the time. That was my first foray into real estate. And I didn't love property management. It didn't connect with me, and I sort of wavered with it, and I sort of thought, why am I doing this now? I should be out drinking beer all night and playing footy during the day and all those things that you do in your early 20s. But it's sort of, I don't know, I did that for a couple of years, and then I found my way to Jealous Craig because I knew a couple of people there, and that was in Hawthorn, and that was right when it was sort of going through a rapid growth phase, and it was really good fun. And a lot of young people there at the time. So, and people who are still great friends. So, people like Cam Ward, Brad Cooper, Mark Damon. I used to work under Mark Damon and Doug McLaughlin, Geordie Dixon, people like this. So really, it was a really great team at the time, and I learned a lot. And Richard Jealous was a fantastic boss at the time, and I learned a lot from him. So that was terrific. And then I sort of found my way to Kane Burton. I don't know, you asked me off camera, how did you not wind up at Marshall White? And
I couldn't believe it.
I don't know. Like, I think a few people who work at Kane Burton worked under Dad at Marshall White back in those days. So I probably followed the people, not the business so much that I knew. And Ross Savvis was one of those people. He worked for Dad at Marshall White, and I knew Ross. Ross was one of the people around at our house every night after work. So he was probably the big one that that sort of drew me there. And Ross was really at the peak of his powers then, and really doing a phenomenal amount of deals. And so I just sort of grabbed hold of his coattails, and 16 years later, I'm still at Kane Burton.
Yeah, phenomenal. So as a young buck, hearing Dad be it do a deal or help other agents with a deal on the go, or just their career in general, did you have aspirations to be an estate agent from a young tacker, or did you sort of avoid it and then say, well, it's probably in the blood, I need to do what I'm best at?
Yeah, I never sorted out. Like, I remember my Saturday mornings, I'd probably go and do Vic Kick or Oz Kick or whatever it was back in the day, and then I'd get in the car with Dad, and he'd go and do auctions on the hour, every hour, and then we'd go into the footy on Saturday afternoons. And that was back in the days when, I keep on sounding like I'm 100 years old, but I probably am. Back in the day. But that was when all the footy was played at 2:00 on a Saturday afternoon. So we'd go into the MCG after that. And I grew up as a 10-year-old, 12-year-old, going to 3 or 4 auctions every single Saturday. So it was kind of in my blood a little bit, and I enjoyed it. And I always thought that Dad was a real sort of man about town. Like, you'd go into a restaurant and he'd shake 10 people's hands when he walked in, and he's still that way, by the way. So I kind of, Dad had a bit of an aura about him, and he was, I knew it was a very social business back in the days, and I loved those aspects of it. And, it was all nice suits and nice cars and all those sorts of things. So it was a kind of a cool business, but I never thought of it as an industry, as a business that I'd go into. So, I don't know, it just sort of found me in a way. And like everyone, I've probably had ebbs and flows with it, where I've enjoyed it at sometimes more than others. And, I've struggled with it at times and had to reinvent myself and work out what I really wanted to do and commit myself to it. So, I think it's been an interesting journey, but it's also interesting knowing, you do start with a lot of people knowing, a lot of people knew Dad when he was in the game, and he's no longer sort of in town, but I don't know, I sort of knew a lot of people naturally, so maybe that made it a bit easier to really commit to it.
Did you feel the weight of Dad, or have you felt the weight of Dad being who he is and was in the industry? Was there a bit of pressure on you to perform or make sure that your numbers were good from the get-go, or is that
it's an interesting question. I've never thought about it. And Dad, lucky to have a supportive dad, and he's a terrific guy, and he's always been helpful. So I've never sort of thought about that. And it's an interesting question, but not really. I think, and maybe this was also about going to Kane Burton for the sort of the longest part of my industry, part of my career. Maybe that was kind of the separation from Dad and not riding on his coattails at Marshall White. Maybe there's something in that subconsciously that happened as well. But I don't know. Dad's always been supportive. Dad's always, a lot of our family, friends, and that natural network that you have have come to me for for deals. So
Yeah.
it certainly hasn't gotten in the way. I'll put it that way.
Well, that's good. That's good. We see a couple of nice father-son recruits coming through our ranks. We've got Charlie Tosterman doing some beautiful things out of Burundara, and Tom Hain, he's following in
Tommy's a great guy.
Dad's footsteps.
Yeah.
He's a star. He's an auctioneer beyond his years, and you can start to see. I think their story might be a similar one to yours as the years progressed.
Well, you've got, and I know the Bennisons also have that lineage and that sort of, there's some great real estate families in Melbourne like that. So it's great.
No, well done. Well done. Talk to me about the early years in your career. So obviously you've probably got a leg up on a lot of people that just get started in the industry because you had been around it for so long through Dad and his communication. Yep. What were you like in your early years forget the property management side, when you transitioned into sales? What were you like? What were you good at? What were some things that you found challenging? How did you get through it?
Yeah, I probably started at a time when we were still pretty old fashioned in the sense that like technology hadn't taken hold in terms of email and phone, smartphones and things like this. So it was still a bit more of an old school industry where it was all about matching buyers to properties, very relationship driven. I mean, not that it isn't anymore, but it was just different. And I think when I was at Jellis Craig, Mark Damon was, we all know Mark, and he's a very systematic guy, like very systems and procedures and all that sort of stuff.
Yep.
And Mark was the one who really taught me the real systematic approach to real estate, and that was a big learning curve. It's been interesting being at K & Burton because when I switched there, K & Burton was a big sort of deal-making powerhouse, and at the time, it was the days before a bloke called Marcus Kiminello came and grabbed hold of the top end of town. But those guys, Ross, Mike Gibson, Gerald Delaney, those guys were really revered in that part of the market, still are, I guess. So it was interesting to get into the company at that time, and they did a style of business that was very, they got very close to their clients. There was a lot of networking, there was a lot of dinners, there was a lot of entertaining, things like that, where it took it away from sort of that systematic sort of approach to be more along the lines of, that pure kind of networking style of business. So I've had an interesting education, I guess, all the way through my career, where I've been exposed to some really good people that have taught me, sort of the different styles of doing business, and hopefully that's all blended, and I've taken pieces away, the good bits away from each.
Let's talk about those different styles of business. We would both know real estate agents that are incredibly top performers that do or go about their day-to-day in a very different way. You talked about Damon's systematic and process-driven style, which I've seen work wonders, and that's probably the safest way to play it in terms of looking at a database, making 200 prospecting calls a week, sending out some automated email marketing and all that sort of stuff that works beautifully. So you've got that style of agent. And then there's the other style of agent that might still be a little bit old school, where their prospecting's done by walking down the street to a cafe, grabbing a coffee and bumping into 2 or 3 or 4 people at a lunchtime. Yep. And that puts them back on the radar in terms of real estate for that particular client. No doubt you've seen both styles work. Which category do you think you fall into?
Hopefully I'm a mix of both, because it is interesting because I do think there's a place for all those styles, and maybe it comes back to what part of the market you work in as well, because if you're purely in family homes, let's say in your market, and the higher up in the dollar price you go, you're waiting 10 years. You have to build 10 years of, maybe 15 years of relationship with some people before you get a shot at pitching for their business. Yeah. So you got to be really entrenched with that person before that decision comes up, as opposed to, higher turnover markets where you got to be the one on the spot at that point in time. Yeah. And you got to be front of mind at that point in time. So I don't know. I try to sort of blend both. In terms of the way I communicate with my clients. Like, I try to be quite informative. I'm not I think there's been a lot of that sort of boastful marketing that goes on in real estate over the years. And, here are my numbers and here's how good I am and all that sort of stuff. And not that that's wrong. You need to prove to people you can do the job well. But I try and make it about the client, where it's, okay, what's the piece of information that's going to help them make their next decision?
Yeah.
And that's, I know that sounds simplistic, but it's that's sort of the approach I take. I'm still systematic in my business and with my team, in the sense of, like, we do structure up each day, we do structure up our weeks and plan our months and things like this. But, I do try to be there along the whole of the journey with people. I don't know. And I hate falling out of contact with them. I hate any phone call that starts with, "Oh, I haven't spoken to you for a while." That's not where you should be as an agent.
That's a really, really good point. And our marketplace might not dictate, but it might be a reflection of the style of agent that you can be. So there are more transitional marketplaces that will turn over every 5 to 7 years on average, in terms of maybe the apartment space in the parts of the world that we operate in, or the housing space in some of the outer suburbs, which I've worked in for previous years. And I can tell you that you're absolutely right. You need to be front of mind there and then. It's not so much about bumping into them at the restaurant, every quarter, so to speak. It's, I need someone to help me transact this piece of real estate. And the lucky dip almost comes up. And if you're front of mind for long enough, then you're probably a chance to win that piece of business. If you have a look at the areas that you're operating in and that Marshall White operate in as well, then I think it is far more heavily relationship based and circle of influence based, as opposed to putting your large face on a bus stop, for example, which we've seen.
So I think that's spot on. I was given a piece of advice probably, might have been 10 years ago or something like that. And so one of my sort of mentors said to me, when you get a piece of referral business, or a piece of business that's sort of a warm piece of business, like someone who's known to you or referred or something like that, or a family friend or something like this, do an unreal job for them. Like, go over service it and make it count, because that person will just keep you front of mind, more so than someone who you met at an open, who you don't have the history with. I sort of made that shift and made sure that I really made it count when I had a piece of business that I knew was in my sort of my sphere, and I knew that they were connected to other people that I was connected to. And the more people that sort of say, well, Matt or Mike or whoever, does a great job.
Yeah.
He just did an unbelievable job for us. It was faultless from start to finish. Bang, you got to use them. And I feel like your business then grows organically, and it grows really rapidly, because it just, you just go through your networks.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great piece of advice from whoever gave that to you, and nice to pass that one on to some of the ZOOMCAST listeners. Mike, tell me, what does your day-to-day role look like now, and maybe talk us through your individual team setup, your position within K & Burton. As I said, you're a partner of the business. Maybe talk me through some of that.
So, I mean, I started at K & Burton when it was still a relatively small company. We had one main office in South Yarra, and it's still that's still where our sort of flagship office is, but it's expanded rapidly in my time. And we had Portsea on the peninsula, and so it was a very high-end Stonington business, and now it's sort of obviously fanned out to Hawthorn and Brighton and Armidale and places like this. But I've got a team of 3, including me, and we've got a good rhythm going. So my day-to-day with them, there's always a check-in first thing in the morning, every single day, so without fail. So we just run through that, and I think a lot of people who are listening to this will be the same, where you just need that daily check-in. What's carrying over from yesterday? What's ahead today? Have we got our meetings confirmed? Have we got our pre-list out? Have we got our tick, tick, tick? So I keep a running list of our buyers on every property with Ed, who's my sort of sales offsider, and I make sure that every single buyer is absolutely front of mind for he and I every single day. So I don't know, it's that I think you've got to be that way now. I've been in plenty of sales meetings, as you have, over time, and there's always one or two agents in those meetings that you might say, oh, who are your key buyers on that property? And they might go, oh, we had a guy from, and no one can remember. And I think to myself, if I get a call from a vendor right now, I need to know who their top 3 buyers are. Like, I just feel like that's a minimum level of service you need to give. So we're a bit obsessive about that. We make sure, and I think it's important in recent times in particular, I feel like we go on sprints with these lockdowns and in between them and things like this. We do these sprints and then we stop for a bit. And even in lockdowns, and you and I were talking about this before we went on camera, it was like there's always this burst of work that happens about managing buyers and sellers the moment that we go into lockdowns, because there are deals to be done and there are sometimes or deals not to be done, and a plan needs to be made for what happens on the other side. So I don't know, we manage that on a daily basis. We're pretty planned and pretty strategic about all of that. Like, we have a business plan that we review once a week. We go to on a Friday morning, we go to a different cafe once a week just to mix it up, to kind of check in with each other and make sure the 3 of us are aware of each other's goals and buy into those goals.
Yeah.
And so there's that sort of team element where it's not just about, right, how many deals are we going to do this month?
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know, have we met that fitness target that we were trying to hit, or have we met that savings goal that we were trying to hit, so we can go out and buy that next property or whatever, those sorts of things that are the bigger picture.
Long gone, Michael, are the team leader employee relationship. It sounds like it's all encompassing, and that you're buying into your goals inside and outside of the business, and collectively you feel that relationship will make you a better team on field and then closer off field as well. Yep,
100%. We made a big shift recently where we spent some time with a coach, and I'd never been that good at spending time with coaches, because I feel like you're either doing it or you're not in this business. Like, there's a bit of a, you're either wasting your time or you're using it constructively, sort of thing. Like, and that sounds a bit blunt, but I was probably guilty, and we all have it at one stage in our career where you could have been more effective, and you look back on a 12-month period and you go, I was a bit flat for the last 3 months, and not that we have to be up all the time, but I don't know, you go in ebbs and flows with this. This coach said to us, Alexis, who sort of is the business manager of our team, he said, righto, Michael, you are not allowed to touch anything anymore that is, sort of the business or administrative related.
Right.
It's all on Alexis now. You run the team. You're just an employee, Michael. So it was actually, he shifted the whole mindset around this, because, we all get, it's probably my personality that I'm a bit of a control freak like this, and I have to be in control of all of those things. Whereas he just handed it completely over to her, and I'm still having trouble with it, mind you.
Yeah.
But she's brilliant, and she's so organised. She's 10 times more organised than me, and she's got the power now, which is great.
Yeah, we all have that feeling, and we call ourselves control freaks. We just care. We just want to make sure that the job gets done in the style and manner in which you've promised in the listing presentation.
Yep.
You don't want to be the person who said, we do this and we do that, and then the campaign starts and that doesn't happen. It reflects poorly on you, reflects poorly on the brand. And so I feel that sense of you wanting to do the right thing, hence why the control comes in. And I'm with you. I struggle with that as well, letting go of some parts of the business to flourish in other parts that will help the wheels keep spinning for a longer period of time. That's interesting.
It's a trust thing, isn't it? Like,
isn't it? Yeah.
You've got to hand over the trust to people. And I know that she's brilliant at those things, and I know Ed's brilliant at the stuff that he does. So I think it's not hard to do when you really think about it. But the more you do it, the more you grow. So it's pretty simple like that, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, no, well said. What's and obviously you've got an incredibly stable team now. I ask this question to a lot of people that have come on ZOOMCAST, but in the eyes of Michael Armstrong, what are some of the key attributes in your mind that a successful agent would want to possess or want to have?
Yeah, I've got number one at the top of the list is it's just your emotional intelligence. I think, it's your empathy skills, it's your ability to absorb difficult situations and clients and be mindful about that. So we're very big on that. And I think that's one of the big factors that I was looking for when I went looking for my current 2 team members. And probably also the reason that other people that have worked alongside me haven't worked out or we haven't gelled, because I think there's a difference of ability in that regard. So I think that's the number one thing at the moment. And I reckon we're going through, I think, sort of society, and to get all, bigger picture on it, I think society's going through a very emotional time. Like it's we've got politicians who are polarising. We've got, anyway, I don't want to get all sort of on my soapbox about this, but it's we're just going through a weird time. So I think people are getting more demanding without realising it. We're all getting more demanding without realising it, and to have the ability to sort of decipher the job from the emotion of perhaps a client's perspective is a really important skill.
Yeah.
I think number 2 is just simply...
Sorry to interrupt. Can I interrupt? EQ, emotional intelligence, and I was speaking about that exact topic with a new member of our team. Do you believe, can you train emotional intelligence, or are you either born with it or you're not? So how do you learn how to show empathy? How do you learn to care about a client's situation? I know there are some agents in our business or in the industry in general that are just naturally caring people, and sometimes it's to their detriment because they're almost too emotively invested in that particular outcome. And oh no, I told them this price, or I told them that these buyers would come through and they didn't, and I feel like I've let them down. Can you train emotional intelligence?
So we're all sort of the product of our upbringing, and to a degree. But then also attached to that, I reckon, is the environment you're in and the people. What do they say? You're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So having good mentors is probably a good thing, and that's where as you grow and mature and things like this, and you do move into managerial sort of type roles with people. That's when those little day-to-day or moment-to-moment inputs to guide people to be more aware or more, we don't say that, we say this sort of thing. Like, I just think those little bits of guidance are the good moments. So that's where someone can help. There's a lot of resources out there, a lot of great books, podcasts. I think most people would have been listening to Hugh Van Cuylenberg's podcast and the Resilience Project. Like that sort of stuff has been transformative for some people. And Ben Crow's been really active in the corporate space in Australia, and people like this who are bringing to the surface sort of an attitude towards business that you can learn from, and an attitude towards life that you can learn from. And you look at I sort of feel like it's not as sort of a volatile environment anymore, because I remember I've worked in I've worked in situations where people used to butt heads with their clients and give it back to them. And sometimes I've always had that. I'm probably a bit more on that side of things, that I won't lock horns with people. I'll just walk away if it's a waste of time arguing with someone about something. I mean, I'm proud and I've got my point of view, but at the same time, I just kind of look at situations and I say, it's just a waste of time punching on with that person about that topic, because no one wins. Like, whatever. Like, let's get on with life and let's get on with what's important, sort of thing. So I don't know. There's a whole, there's a lot of different approaches, but I think we're all becoming more aware of it, just based on what what we listen to and what we hear and what we read and things like this.
Well said. I didn't mean to take you off track. I've got emotional intelligence written down as the number one attribute that a successful salesperson or specifically real estate agent would want to have. Maybe a couple of others.
I just think speed of service is everything. I think we live in a faster paced world than ever before, and it's only going to get quicker. So to be aware of that and response times, and being able to be reached on the phone is like the number one thing I think you hear from a lot of people. I've got one of my best clients. He says, he always says to me, and he just keeps saying it. He goes, I only deal with you because you were the only one who ever picked up your phone when I used to call you 10 years ago or whatever. And I don't know, that can be luck maybe, but yeah, I think being accessible to people and being responsive and proactive is a massive attribute. And that's probably something that's a bit more innate as well. You know, it's that proactive thing where could you have done more sort of thing. And you look back at every deal and you kind of think, okay, did we execute that flawlessly, or was there one part of it that we could have done better? So I think having that sort of entrepreneurial sort of mindset is a really important thing to have as an agent. And then I think time management is probably the other thing. As I've gotten older and had more time in this industry and more time in life, I value my time more, and I mean that in the sense that like I try not to waste time now. So like if I'm like scrolling mindlessly through Instagram or something, I'm like, what am I doing? Stop wasting time. Like I could be doing something so much more effective with my time than that. Yeah. So I don't know. And I also think that goes onto the client side by saying, well, stop wasting your clients' time. Yeah. Feed them quality information instead of just sending them nonsense.
Yeah.
And I don't know. There's a balance, of course, but yeah, I think just time management and being effective with your time is and knowing the value of your time, because let's face it, we're not like, you know, this time in your career when you know, and you and I are just a couple of young bucks, Matty, but we're still in that category, I hope. But I think, you know, where you've got to be, it's only fleeting. Like I remember 10 years ago, like it was yesterday sort of thing. So you got to be present and you got to be enjoying yourself and you got to get the most out of your time. And if you're not that way and you're prepared to waste your time, well, I don't know. I don't get along with those sorts of people.
No, you've summed that up beautifully. We're hearing it the other day. I can't remember where I heard it, but I think one of our guys on an internal training session was summing up what we do is purely, it's a lifestyle. It's not a job or a career. It's all encompassing. And through what you do for work, you connect with people on a social level and vice versa. And it's more of a lifestyle than it is just a job or, you know, something you do to earn an income. And the people that have been in it for a very long time, I think, have this beautiful balance between on-field and off-field. And I think you've summed up that really well with some of the comments you just made.
Yeah.
Michael, tell me we'll fast forward to now, and obviously we're in lockdown bloody 6. I can't even believe I'm saying it, but you and I were speaking off camera. We were talking about the intensity of the market that's still ticking away in the background. If there are campaigns that have been held where inspections have been held, or a number of inspections to be able to build a war chest of buyers, that seems to be enough viewing opportunity to be able to produce an outcome for a client who's looking to sell a piece of real estate. And I think both your brand and ours are seeing the same thing, that there's a lot of pent-up demand there. People are still wanting to transact despite being locked down. And if they did have an opportunity to see something, then they're trying to go after it. Auction or expressions of interest deadline or whatever the case may be. Talk me through your world from a real estate perspective through COVID and what you're seeing.
I agree. I think every time we lock down, we get more and more. I think the buyers and the sellers almost get more and more educated around how they need to act and they need to seize opportunities. So it almost is, and given the market's strong, that's almost been self-fulfilling for a lot of buyers and sellers. So I think we're there to facilitate things and to give, to give people obviously the plan and the strategy around these things, and to not miss an opportunity if there's one there. But I find that these lockdowns, either going into them or coming out of them, have been great opportunities to bring urgency into some deals that need them. And so we've always prepared our clients to say, and certainly coming out, and I think everyone has done this now, and maybe we didn't do it, maybe we didn't trust it the first couple of times it happened, but nowadays, it's like, guys, get ready for the restart, because we are going to be ready for the restart. There's going to be 10 buyers through your door, and I reckon one of them is going to make an offer and trigger a process. So we've got to be ready for that coming out of lockdowns. I think we've also, going back to not wasting time, we've stopped wasting time in lockdowns. Like today, and I think most people I've spoken to, colleagues and, you know, yourself, I've been on half a dozen Zooms, I've been for walks with clients, things like this. Like time hasn't been wasted in lockdown. So it's been a really effective time, and I've been, you know, the time spent on the phone to set things up has been much more effective than it was.
Yep.
Mate, you're right. The demand is there and the market dynamic is there for activity to take place straight after we go into lockdown or straight after we leave it. So that's going to be the case again. And I think at the moment, I don't know about everyone else, but I feel the least confident about the COVID lockdown situation right now than I ever have.
Interesting, yeah. Yeah.
My greatest learning through it all was last year when we went into the first lockdown. Remember when we had like stage 3 or whatever it was, where we could still take inspections and we had gloves and masks and sanitizer and things, but we could still take inspections. Yeah. And I had a client who had about a $5 million house in Hawthorne, and we set it up. It was going to be auction, but we set it up as a private sale. And I remember saying to that client, while we could still do inspections, I said, let's just hold 5 because this thing will blow over. How wrong I was. But I said, this will blow over. It might be a month, might be 2 months, but they needed to sell their house because they'd committed elsewhere and had a bit of motivation, and the settlement wasn't going to be moved. So the husband of the couple, he said to me, he goes, I reckon we're in a good market. Like, I don't think things have changed that much. And he said, there's more urgency around. Why don't we just point the ship at the storm and see how we go? He goes, at least we know it's shit out there, or we know it's difficult, and at least we can have a crack.
Yeah.
We did, and that house sold for its full asking price within about a week. And I kind of went, hang on, there's something to this, because, and it kept on happening. You know, a lot of people were doing these deals where property hit the market and 3 days later it had sold.
Yeah.
And it was amazing to see that the demand was there, and we knew it was, and we knew it wasn't going to change. And with interest rates going down and things, the only unknown was how badly people would be whacked by sort of, you know, job losses and things like this. And that never, I mean, in some sectors it has, and some people are doing it extremely tough. But most people in our parts of the world are, you know, they prospered during this time. A lot of them, especially, you know, the share market, people in financial services, it all went nuts.
Yeah. It's amazing. Some of the things that we thought, that we as an industry, and obviously you're learning on the run, there's no handbook that says COVID, how to do real estate. I get that. But a lot of things that we thought traditionally might not work, or traditionally wouldn't work in a non-COVID environment, has actually worked in a COVID environment. So not necessarily having a full 4-week auction campaign, for example, getting enough open for inspections under your belt in a shorter time frame to still transact the property and sell it for a really good price. That's evident. But using technology more with the likes of Zoom and what have you to conduct auctions, and people feeling comfortable in that environment. Who knows? That could be a way of the future for some parts of the world or some property types. July, typically a pretty quiet month in both the markets that we work in. I had a lady who was selling an apartment, a good apartment, Art Deco in St Kilda. And I said, look, even though people aren't jumping on planes as often, it's probably going to be a quieter time of the year. People might want to escape and have a little bit of a break because they haven't had an opportunity to get away for so long. She said, Matt, I get it, but I really want this on the market because I've bought in WA and I need to go. And I said, okay, well, I'm not going anywhere. I'll put it on the market. It's the strongest sale I've had all year in the apartment space in terms of reserve versus result. And again, it just bucked what we assume to be the norm and what has worked in the past because the climate and the game has changed.
Yeah, that's so true. I think this will be the year that seasonality died in our industry, because it's, you know, remember how we used to sit in front of a calendar with our clients and say, well, here are school holidays and we've got to avoid those and all of this. And I think even coming out of this lockdown, I've set up a few campaigns to be private sales with a range attached to them. And once we get that right offer and once we've had enough people through, we'll just simply convert to a Zoom auction or some sort of conclusion like that. And so the flexibility is coming to the selling process. And let's face it, the buyers haven't really kind of flinched with all of this. They just understand that this is the new landscape that we've got.
How are you handling, just every market's got a different set of machinations, and this current climate is obviously strongly weighted to the seller. How are you handling buyers that are disgruntled, that are disappointed, that are seeing auction prices soar beyond what price ranges and price guides are suggesting? Do you have a strategy in terms of how you handle those people? Is it a case of just trying to service them for the next opportunity?
Yeah, I mean, as the market's been so strong, I reckon our industry is not, you're either working on one side of the deal or the other. And at the moment, like the last 12 months has been all about getting stock, and it's been so undersupplied. So you're trying to help people by getting more stock, but at the same time, you do have, for every 5 bidder auction, there's 4 that miss out, and there's 4 that are pretty pissed off about it, for want of a better word. So I think that, at the moment, there's the time spent with people in the campaign has got to be thorough. So each buyer, and sometimes, people have that experience where they see a price range, they go through an open, they don't get a call between then and an auction day, and it goes for 30% more. But it's those little touch points to say to someone, look, just letting you know, this has been a popular campaign. We expect competition, blah, blah, blah. Those sorts of little touch points. I mean, I know we all, most people in the industry do that, but it's the ones that don't that sort of get the bad rap and get the bad reputation as agents. So important to be with people on the journey. It goes back to the empathy piece. Put yourself in their shoes. They're missing out on auctions every week. So it's important to be, just giving them as much care as possible. At the same time, I mean, a lot of people know that it's bloody tough out there to buy a house. You don't have to speak to the advocates and things, and they all say that at the moment they're missing out every week because they're trying to justify and rationalise a certain figure, and it's not, it's getting blown away at every auction. So I feel like
the statement of information world, in my opinion, pre and post, has changed the game. When the statement of information first came into play, I think agents were gun shy about saying anything else other than the price range on this property is 2 to 2.2, and because they were fearful that there was going to be backlash and what have you. There is nothing wrong, and this is just an opinion. There is nothing wrong with doing exactly what you just suggested and saying to a buyer, hey, we've got some really good depth in this campaign. There are a number of parties that are showing some interest, and I wouldn't be surprised to see this one perform exceptionally well or really well or a strong result.
Yeah, and that is what's wrong with the legislation, in my opinion. And we're over-legislated in that regard. Yes, it does need to be sort of, it's a bit market-centric, isn't it? Like the way that the legislation, I don't think works in all markets. It only works in a flatline market. But a rapidly rising or dropping market like we have and the volatility that we've had, it's hard to write legislation for that. So you're right, early days, we had our compliance officer in every sales meetings correcting us, saying, no one's to say it's going to go berserk. Don't use that language. Right. And it was like, yeah, but it is. And well, lift your range. And it was like, everyone was terrified to say anything.
That's the word, we're terrified, because you didn't want to be the person that stuffed it up for everybody else in terms of the way you communicated price to the market. And it's interesting. I saw Amy Lenardi, who's a good advocate, put something up about Queensland and the fact that it's illegal to put price guides on properties. It sounds absurd, but and this is 2 states above us. We're in the same part of the world, but it's extraordinary the differences, isn't it?
Well, God, I think that was, I don't know it intimately, but I think that was just a backlash almost from the agents to the government saying, if you want to really go berserk and tighten the screws on us this much, guess what? Consumers going to lose. Because we're just going to step back from it all. So I don't know. I don't know what the answer is, and we could talk all day around in circles about legislation, but it's a communication business, isn't it? So you've got to try and help people within the framework that we've given, and that's just called service. That's simply what it is. I think in terms of trying to help people outside of just the people you're dealing with in your specific campaigns, it's hard. You've got to help them. And you and I and a lot of people listening to this will be asked every weekend to bid for a client or to help them. And help them negotiate and things like this. And again, going back to the whole collaborative thing about the industry, this is where we can all get more deals done and help each other and be reasonable towards each other. But it's a hard thing at the moment, isn't it? Because sometimes the best advice is you're going to have to really just suck it up and pay a bit more than you think it's worth, because unfortunately you'll be looking for another 6 or 12 months if you don't get this one.
Yeah, you talk about that collaboration. So you and I met, or we did a deal together somewhat, didn't we, in Elwood, where you were good friends with the buyer who eventually bought the property. Myself and Kane Lanyon were representing the vendor of that property. You and I, we might have known each other's name, certainly me to you more than you to me, but I would never met in person. And from that deal being done is how this episode of Zoomcast has come about. It was nice to deal with somebody who understood the mechanics of the deal and went about it in the right way. And I think that there's plenty more opportunity for that sort of outcome to transpire.
Yeah, definitely. No, and that was spot on. And I think a lot of buyers and sellers don't do this often, and they don't know the process all that well. So to have people in their corner who are, like you say, who are collaborative and respectful about it all, and at the end of the day, people just want to buy that house and they're happy to pay a fair price, maybe a touch more, whatever. These things can come together pretty easily, and there sort of seems to be over time a lot of agents that make it difficult, and it shouldn't be. And maybe that's an ego thing, maybe that's, I don't know, but maybe I feel like at the moment we're probably, the industry is a lot more humble than it probably used to be. There's a lot of extroverts still, but there's a bit more humility about all of this, and it's, people understand what their role is.
Yeah,
and it's not to necessarily have all the glory or anything. It's just to get people what they want.
Yeah.
Make it easy for them.
You've given the Zoomcast listeners exactly what they want, Michael. You've been outstanding. We're almost out of time. Talk to me briefly about your link to My Room. I know you're a charitable person, and I've seen that on your Instagram bio. Maybe just a quick understanding as to your involvement there.
Yeah, so My Room's a childhood cancer charity. I haven't had any direct experience with that, thankfully, with anyone who I've known or anything like this, but I had friends on that committee who, whenever they ran charity, they've got a big charity ball. In fact, it was meant to be in 2 weeks' time, and I reckon a lot of people from Marshall White would have attended that over the years. It's a pretty famous ball each year. It's been going for about 30-odd years. And 2 friends of mine were on that committee, and they said to me, I always help them out with the auction, or I help them outsource some items or stuff like this. And they sort of said, well, why don't you just join? And it's actually a really good outlet. It's amazingly humbling, like, to be a part of that, and it's good to have an interest outside of work. And I felt like I needed that, because let's face it, real estate does get consuming. You can sit on your phone trying to do deals and prospect and do all those things all day, every day. But to actually have a chop out and to spend, I don't know, it's not hugely time consuming. It's an hour or 2 each week that I'd probably spend on it, and in the peak times maybe a bit more. But terrific group of people. Obviously, it's good to do something that, you don't directly benefit from. You're doing something for someone else. So, and I play a very small part in that group, but it's tremendously successful in terms of how much money it raises. It's a big organisation now, so it really does turn over some huge numbers relative to its size, and it's all every single person on it is working pro bono. So there's not one. Well, Marg Zeta, who's the CEO, she's the only paid employee, and she takes pittance for it, and she's an absolute saint. But I just think it's great to have interests outside of work, and that's what it's been for me, and it's an enjoyable thing to do.
Well done. Great to be a part of that. And so many of the more reputable real estate agencies, be it franchises, be it private groups, whatever, do get involved in a lot of charitable stuff that a lot of it's behind the scenes, and the average person may not know. And you're absolutely right. I think it's to have an interest outside of real estate and to give back to a community that you're able to prosper from through the work that you do day to day. So that's outstanding. Last one from me. If you could grab an agent at the moment, be it a partner, a director, or be it someone day one, week one, and say, mate, we're all in this together in this lockdown. in this COVID environment. We don't know necessarily when it's going to end. We all anticipate, I think, that we probably are going to go deeper into this lockdown period. What would you say to them? Would you have them focus on the on-field stuff, the off-field stuff, a combination of the two?
It's a good question. I think it's a combination of the two, because business is going to keep rolling and the market's going to keep rolling. So we've got to innovate and continue to find ways to transact and to find people houses and to do things. And I think that happened really rapidly when it did look like we were going to go into a very long-term, well, we were in a long-term lockdown last year. But the evolution happened really quickly, where a lot of agents pivoted to online auctions and online viewings. I remember racing around and getting videos of properties before we were going into lockdowns, all that sort of stuff. So I think sort of like you adapt and you innovate. And I think, platforms like this, like doing a good podcast where you might pick up one or two good ideas from someone else in the industry, are a great sort of knowledge source. But that piece of advice has to be balanced, and it has to be all about building relationships 100%. Yeah. And sometimes it's the check-in calls, or it's the sort of the longer term perspective you might take in a phone call to someone that you're not going to get anything out of straight away, but it might position them to benefit from that advice long term. Don't know, that might be the right approach. But we're in a business where we do have to make contact with people a lot, and we do have to work hard to make sure that people are informed. So that's probably the basis of the focus. Like the off-field, I think 100% keeping fit, keeping busy, knowing the value of your time, because some people view lockdowns as holidays, and I'm not a hard-ass work sort of guy, but I do think you can waste a lot of time very quickly in lockdowns. So it's having a plan for it. And I listened to Marcus's ZOOMCAST the other day when he was saying he wanted to come out of lockdown a better person than he went in. And I love that, because it's so true. You can, there's always a part of your business you can improve. There's always your health you can improve. You can read another book, all that sort of stuff. And so, I just signed up for an online course that I'm doing, and I do it 90 minutes on a Wednesday evening with a group of people. And that's something I wouldn't have had time for.
Fitness thing?
It's a bit more holistic than that. Like it's diet, fitness, mindfulness, it's sort of planning and strategy sort of stuff around just building your business and building your life and all this sort of stuff. I don't know. But that sort of stuff's really powerful. But that's a 12-week course that I'm doing every Wednesday night. And I don't know, I just feel like that's a really effective way to use a downtime. Yeah,
amazing. Well done. That has been, geez, if somebody doesn't get something out of this, then maybe they haven't listened too carefully. This will be available on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube now, of course, Instagram. I'm going to tag you, Mike, and I'd appreciate you sharing it. It has been an absolute joy. The sun's moved for both of us. I look quite angelic here as we're about to sign off. But, mate, I generally appreciate you jumping on and as I said, doing a collaborative effort between two pretty reputable brands in Kay and Burton and Marshall White. May it long continue, and may you have some great success in your part of the world for many years to come. Thanks for jumping on.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Matt.
Thanks, mate.